U.S. President Donald Trump has announced a 25% tariff on all car and light truck imports into the country. In his first few days in office, Trump has clearly threatened Europe with tariffs. How severe could the consequences be for Germany and the United States? Trump has threatened to impose a 25% tariff on imports from the European Union, accusing the bloc of taking advantage of the U.S. Germany, at the heart of Europe, is a country with a long history in automotive and technology production, a giant in international trade, and a nation that has strengthened its economic power through years of intense exchanges with the United States. However, on March 27, 2025, voices from Berlin made it clear that Germany had no reservations about Washington's new customs policies, which were described as protectionist. Germany, which until then had tried to maintain a diplomatic balance within the European Union, learned that the Trump administration's 25% tariff on automobile imports was just the beginning. The German government sent a strong message: if they underestimate us, we will respond with everything we have. Moreover, Germany is not alone in this. On the same day, France reacted similarly, saying, "We are not afraid of a tough trade fight with the United States," strengthening Europe's united stance. American officials must now realize the seriousness of this anger, as Germany is Europe's industrial giant and a global exporter of automobiles and machinery. If these measures proceed, it could lead to an economic rupture between Washington and Berlin, perhaps not seen for decades. When a senior figure in the German government said, "Nothing is ruled out," the first thought that came to mind was taxes and restrictions on U.S. tech giants. Until now, Germany has generally taken a softer line with its European allies and avoided a direct tariff war with the United States. But on that day, Germany stated, "Our measures will not be limited to automobiles." There could be very harsh responses in technology, agriculture, and possibly taxes on digital services. This was almost a "we are ready for them" response to the Trump administration's warning that the tariff began at 25%. But bigger tariffs could follow if necessary. At the same time, signals from Berlin implied that Germany would not sit idly by if the U.S. imposed new tariffs on steel or technology products, and might even act jointly with the European Union. This protectionist tug-of-war, which began over the last 2 years with automobiles, looks set to expand to new sectors such as electric vehicles, battery technology, and even artificial intelligence software. Germany's position is crucial because it is the engine of the European Union, with a significant portion of the EU's total trade volume revolving around products from Germany. Automotive brands such as Mercedes, BMW, Audi, and Volkswagen have millions of vehicles on U.S. roads. According to estimates, Germany's automotive and parts exports to the U.S. exceeded $35 billion by 2024. In addition, machinery and equipment, chemical products, and high-tech devices are significant exports. Germany is one of the leading suppliers to the U.S. automobile market, but Trump's 25% tariff has shaken the sector, causing sales of German cars to slow down due to price hikes. The Berlin government responded, saying, "We can't keep quiet about such a unilateral measure." On the morning of March 28, 2025, the German government spokesperson stated, "If necessary, we can also impose additional duties on American vehicles, American electronic products, or agriculture." For the American administration, this is not an easy situation because Germany is at the forefront, not just as a country, but as the leading economy of the entire European Union. Other major members, such as France, Italy, and Spain, are also considering joint retaliatory packages against the U.S. under the European Commission's guidance. The most concrete indication of this came when the European Commission leader stated that U.S. auto tariffs were a direct blow to the European economy, and Europe has its countermeasures ready. Some officials have even suggested that these measures might not be limited to the automobile sector but could also target American airlines or technology platforms. Such a development could disrupt the global trade balance, especially with Canada's potential retaliation and Europe's large market. US-EU and US-Canada trade flows, totaling $1.8 trillion, could be on the verge of a breakdown. The German administration's statement that taxes on U.S. tech giants are also on the agenda has reignited the debate over digital services tax. A few years ago, Germany and France took some steps in this direction but were unable to implement them due to opposition from the US. Now, there is an approach suggesting that if the US is imposing tariffs on automobiles, steel, and energy, then Europe is not restricted when it comes to digital taxes. This approach could mean that US social media and e-commerce platforms would face additional costs in Europe. Retaliation may not stop there, as there are discussions in Germany about imposing additional tariffs on American agricultural products, reducing import quotas, or creating regulations that would make it more difficult for US producers in the European market. This could anger US farmers, as Europe is a significant market for US agricultural exports. If all of this escalates, the Trump administration could face tremendous pressure domestically, with Germany leading the charge against Trump's auto tariffs and refusing to back down. Berlin is preparing to take a firm stance, not only at the trade ministry level but also at the highest levels. On March 27, 2025, the German finance minister was quoted as saying, "We will not hesitate to defend our national interests." The US may be our largest trading partner, but this does not mean a one-sided relationship. The economy minister also warned Washington that such high tariffs would have devastating consequences for global trade. Germany appears ready to discard its usual diplomatic courtesy, which could lead to significant problems not only in trade but also in transatlantic relations. Some in the US believe that Trump will reconsider and that he will face severe consequences if he confronts both the EU and Canada simultaneously. However, the president is determined to win. Experts argue that if Germany becomes the driving force behind the EU's response, Canada might introduce its own retaliatory measures, creating intense pressure on the US. Trump risks losing $1.8 trillion in trade flows because of these tariffs, which could potentially result in job losses in both Germany and the US. This scenario is one that no one wants to face, but politics seem to be overtaking economic reasoning. This is exactly what Berlin means when it says, "Nothing is ruled out." If necessary, Germany is willing to pay the price and retaliate. German automotive giants are also trying to protect their own interests. If tariffs on the US market rise, companies like BMW, Mercedes, and Audi may have to shift more production to the US. However, new tariffs could make it harder for them to obtain materials. The situation is therefore complex. German companies are both telling their government not to escalate matters with excessive retaliation, while also urging the Trump administration to remove the unreasonable tariffs. In the post-Merkel era, influential figures in German politics believe that Germany will not give in any longer. Despite the potential loss of the car brand's interests, Germany is unwilling to compromise in the name of national honor and European interests. This stance is also supported by public opinion. Relations with the US are valuable, but not one-sided, as is frequently said in Berlin. On March 28, Trump imposed a 25% tariff on German cars, and many Germans in street interviews questioned why they shouldn't fight back. Another aspect of the European response involves France and Italy, which could face significant challenges in penetrating major US markets in agriculture, luxury goods, and technology if tariffs are raised. France would be hit hard on products like wine and cheese, while Italy would be affected by tariffs on fashion and food. In response, French leaders are threatening to impose tariffs on US agricultural products, and Germany has indicated it may act alongside France on this issue. It's even possible that the two countries will prepare a joint package at the EU Commission level. There's talk of adding items such as digital service taxes on US tech giants to this package. The question remains whether retaliatory measures could also target American aerospace companies like Boeing or Silicon Valley startups. If so, this could escalate the transatlantic crisis even further. If, on the one hand, Canada reduces energy exports and Europe introduces digital taxes, the US could suddenly find itself in diplomatic isolation. Since March 27, the German media has been filled with headlines like, "We will not bow to Trump." They've faced tariffs on steel and aluminum before and have been patient, but now they cannot accept tariffs targeting their automobile sector. Workers at companies like Mercedes, BMW, Audi, and Volkswagen have expressed that these tariffs are seriously damaging their businesses, causing export declines and slowing production lines. German trade unions are also taking to the streets, calling for action. If America initiates a trade war, our government must not stand idly by. Under such domestic pressure, the Berlin government may be forced to respond forcefully to Trump. This is the reality behind the headlines. Germany may retaliate against Trump's tariffs with all available means. While Germany appears outwardly calm, internally it is facing growing tension. This tension could escalate into a major conflict that could involve the United States. Germany's leadership on the European stage is now in direct conflict with Trump's warning that if the EU and Canada unite, they will face tariffs that exceed previous plans. It remains uncertain how far Berlin will go, how unified the EU will be, or whether Canada will coordinate fully. However, judging by the current strong rhetoric, if Washington does not agree to a realistic compromise, Germany may impose tariffs on both cars and U.S. technology. This could destabilize an already fragile global economy. Trade wars have shown time and again that there are no true winners, but the Trump administration insists that as a major power, the U.S. cannot lose. Germany, on the other hand, insists that enough is enough and will retaliate against tariffs that turn into aggression. France and other countries, especially France, may support any European measures, and if coordination is achieved, a significant portion of the U.S.'s $1.8 trillion trade flow could be at risk. Some observers believe that the announcement of retaliatory tariffs by Europe and Canada, either separately or together, could push the U.S. to negotiate. Others believe Trump is determined not to back down, which could lead to a major crisis. It is clear that Germany will not jeopardize its automotive sector, the backbone of its economy, and the EU may not let Germany stand alone. This is why Germany may retaliate fully against Trump's tariffs, not as an exaggeration, but as a reflection of harsh reality. Berlin is using both its historical and economic power to challenge the U.S., demanding that America take Europe seriously or face inevitable retaliation. At the same time, Germany's stance is fueling a debate on global leadership. The EU has long been seen as disorganized, but the search for a unified response to America could spark a sense of unity. It remains to be seen whether Trump's divide-and-rule strategy will succeed in sowing discord within the EU. However, the Germany-France alliance appears to limit this possibility, and all eyes are now on whether U.S. industry, agriculture, and technology lobbies will pressure their own government. If Germany retaliates at full force, U.S. companies could face significant challenges in the European market, potentially leading to domestic criticism of Trump's policies. Furthermore, if Canada joins in, there could be risks to energy and parts supplies from the north and in the automotive and technology sectors in Europe, leading to a double blow to the U.S. In other words, political decision-makers in Berlin may be hoping for a softening of U.S. domestic politics, but the signals since March 27 suggest Trump has no intention of backing down. If you move against us, we will impose much bigger tariffs, the president has repeatedly stated. German analysts argue that the enormous trade flow between the two countries means that while Europe will suffer, America will face much greater losses. The key question is whether Trump will risk these losses. The answer remains unclear. What do you think? Is Germany really prepared to make a full-scale effort against Trump's tariffs, or is this more of a bargaining tactic? If Germany, as the EU's largest economy and automotive giant, takes significant steps to disrupt the U.S. market, will Trump back down, or will he stand firm? With the potential involvement of Canada, is the U.S. taking a gamble that could put its $1.8 trillion trade flow at risk? Perhaps, after all this tension, a last-minute negotiation will emerge, and a middle ground will be reached where both sides compromise. However, the current rhetoric is so harsh, and there is no sign of compromise yet. Don't forget to share your thoughts with us. If you subscribe to our channel and like our video, we can continue to track these developments in real time. Now that Germany's concerns have resonated across Europe, the question of whether Trump's unilateral trade moves will be halted will continue to dominate the agenda. As the war of nerves between global trade powers intensifies, Germany is poised to be a key player in this conflict. We will continue to monitor every step of this significant struggle. Who knows, maybe Washington will reconsider its approach as Berlin makes its final move. Otherwise, this trade war, rapidly spiraling toward an abyss, may inflict lasting damage on the global economy. Time will tell.